Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, we're talking about the Freedom Trucker Convoy. It carries on. They are parked. They're like immovable objects, and it is leaving the Canadian government stumped. They're having a difficult time wrapping their heads around the logistical nightmare that the insurrectionist truckers are conducting upon their city. And so today we're going to spend some time bouncing around the government again, because they're holding these press briefings and city council meetings, and they're trying to update everybody. They're sort of escalating their media game, and they're also escalating their enforcement game, because today the Ottawa police came out and they said, listen, we've got a new crime in mind. It's called mischief. And we're going to go and start enforcing this if you truckers don't bend the knee and fall into line. And so we're going to spend a lot of time on this today, listening in particular to the deputy police chief out of Ottawa. His name is Stephen Bell. And he gave a press conference yesterday in conjunction with a new updated press release that came out today. And a lot of people are hinting at the idea that the law enforcement agencies, now that they're going to be supported by an additional several hundred RCMP agents and so on, that they're going to start rounding people up. And so we're going to see if there's any real possibility of that by their own words, because it sounds like they're spread pretty thin as we break all of this down. So we've got Mayor Jim Watson. He is taking questions from the media. We've got another politician. No, that was Jim Watson. We've got Stephen Bell. But then at the end, we're going to sort of take a look at some of the reaction as to what's going on out there. There are two Canadian Liberal politicians, somebody named Robillard and Lightbound, who are sort of breaking ranks with the Canadian left. And then we also were going to hear that Alberta ended their mandates, but then kind of, said that they might come back. But this is also spreading around outside of Ottawa, outside of Alberta, outside of Coots and the border crossing. Now it's going over to a place called Ambassador Bridge, which is right on the border between Canada and the United States, right near Detroit, between Windsor and Detroit in the United States. And so there is somebody named Drew Dilkens who was providing an update about that, because the truckers have basically taken over this bridge. And so the Canadian authorities are like, man, we are just stumped as can be. We need some help to sort through this. Well, we're going to help maybe give them some ideas, like, talking with the truckers or ending the mandates. Those might be some solutions. But as we're going to hear, they don't want to talk about it. And so we've got a lot to get into. If you want to be a part of the show, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. They're chatting away over there. Jump in, Jeff. I'm not gas. They've got, let's see, I'm scrolling up. B-Spec is here. Ion Energy, Kincaid, Tweak are all there. We had a live stream that we did earlier today where we talked about our new private Telegram group. It's pretty cool. And so we have a sort of a community chat now that will unveil to YouTube supporters as well. And so if you're a member on YouTube, you'll get access to that. But we had a nice live stream. And if you're interested in some additional content, support us over on Locals. There's also a live chat or a live stream thread, comments thread. It looks like that. If you're a member on YouTube, you get access to these wonderful gifts. We'd love your support on YouTube. We've got a special Canadian flag gift that we've got in motion right now. It's beautiful. Look at that thing. You get tiers, you get badges if you're a member there. You get shout outs every now and then. Mr. J-Bug, Blue Bunny, Ricky Bishop, Henry Dixon are all in the house. And so why not join? There's a button right there. And so you can join along in on the fun, and the Telegram group will be available for all supporters there as well. All right, without any further ado, let's get into it. Situation escalating a little bit of a smidge there in Ottawa, as the police are now saying they're going to be charging particular crimes. They've identified one for us that they're going to really kind of sink their teeth into. Here is what the message looked like when it came out today, February 9th, 2:57 p.m. Published by the Ottawa Police Service, the police of Ottawa. It says a message to demonstrators from the Ottawa Police Service. And so, sounds like this could be some serious business here. It says, listen, it is a criminal offense to obstruct, interrupt, or interfere with a lawful use, enjoyment, or operation of property. All right. They say this offense is known as mischief to property. Oh my God. Sounds pretty rough. It says the unlawful act of blocking streets and downtown cores resulting in people being denied the lawful use, enjoyment, and operation of their property. And so my question, I'm not a Canadian lawyer. Don't try to be one or pretend to be one. But are they talking about government property or people's property? And I'd like to know what interest they're talking about. Like, can people not go onto their personal property because of the truckers? As far as I've seen, the truckers are in the streets, right? And they retire to their individual locations, but are they really interfering with other people's enjoyment of their property? Because if it's city property, then it's not their property. All right, anyways. We are providing you notice that anyone blocking streets or assisting others in the blocking of streets may be committing a criminal offense. And again, it's like, what property are you talking about? It says you must immediately cease further unlawful activity or you may face charges. Published February 9th. It says you could be arrested without a warrant for this offense if you are a party to the offense or assisting others in the direct or indirect commission of the offense. So anybody who's helping, carrying those containers, even if it's not your truck, when you were released on bail, you might not even be let out of custody, they say. It depends on the criminal code. Offense-related property, including vehicles, may be seized as part of the offense. So we might actually take your truck, take your property. The vehicles may be detained and following a conviction, even forfeited. Those are expensive vehicles. So it says charges or convictions related to this activity may lead to denial in crossing the USA border. All right. And so I guess they mean serious business now. Pack it up, go home. You saw a press release. All right, that's it. I guess everything. Okay, so they might charge people with mischief for property. Now, we're going to break this down in a lot more detail because as we're going to hear, it sounds like they're spread pretty thin. But they are pulling out all the stops. They're trying to really aggravate this thing and escalate this. They're at least trying to put the squeeze on people with the hopes that maybe it will cause people to just say, uh-oh, this is too much pressure for me. I've been here for the last 11, 12 days. Suddenly now I'm just going to go home. And it really might, right? Because they're talking about arresting people and taking your property. And there's some people who say, all right, look, maybe the stakes are too high now and maybe I will leave. And so maybe people do leave. Who knows? But the government, as we can see, is really trying to ratchet things up. They're trying to, as we were speculating yesterday, either, cause a resolution to this thing, cause something to exacerbate so that they can come back with a heavier hand. Not sure. But we can see here, CBC, of course, they are reporting the 13th day of protest. They say the police warn of arrest and they are issuing charges for blocking the streets. Now, they're getting this information from the same press release that we got. But here they're saying the city of Ottawa also increases fines for noise and idling and fires all the way up to $1,000. So now they can issue fines for $1,000 for noise. OPP are talking with Ottawa police about the latest request for help. City Council postponed their meeting. And there's a new protest now at another camp. And so this is going to be a theme as we go throughout the show today. We're going to see that there's this cat and mouse game going on where the truckers are just moving and the police are spinning their wheels trying to figure out how to respond. They say the police are now ordering the Freedom Truckers. It's time to move along and let the traffic flow or face possible arrest and criminal charges. Right? And so you have to sort of separate those two. Like traffic flowing, is that a private property interest of a private Ottawa, Canadian citizen? Do they have a property interest in using the public thoroughfare? I don't know. So we're going to check in with this guy. This guy is now sort of in charge of executing the plan. We spent a lot of the time here talking about Slawley, Police Chief Slawley. This is Deputy Police Chief Stephen Bell. Now, they posted this back yesterday on Ottawa Citizen. They actually have their YouTube channel. On February 8th, Deputy Police Chief Stephen Bell provided an update to the media about policing of the Freedom Convoy. And so we're going to spend some time in this. I have about 7 or 8 different clips of him because he's going to be detailing a lot for us. A lot of it's pretty interesting and pretty good, talking about these new tactics and these new strategies and really getting asked by the media, hey, those jerry cans that they're running all over the place? Did they get you on those? Are you stumped about those? And he's like, oh no, we're not stumped, but they are making things a little bit more complicated, aren't they? So all of these little sort of, back and forth tactics we've seen, law enforcement does something, truckers respond, law enforcement does something, truckers respond. We're going to go through it and break it down in detail. And we're going to follow along with a man on the street, somebody named Ottawa Scotty. I got many recommendations to go check out his live streams after we spent some time yesterday with Viva and many others. And so Ottawaks and I think ZOT YouTube yesterday is who we spent time with. And so today we're going to check in with you, Scotty, you Ottawa Scotty, and we're going to sort of intersperse these two. We're going to take the deputy's claims and we're going to sort of compare and contrast it to the reality as usual. And we'll see where that takes us. All right. And so here we have now the opening statement, okay, of this police chief. I think it's about 3 minutes long. I'm probably going to interrupt it, but let's listen in. This is a press conference to the media, and this is where he's going to be basically giving his opening statement before he starts fielding questions from the media. Let's listen in.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Ottawa Police Service and its partners continue to work all out to put a safe end to the unlawful occupation of our downtown core and improve neighborhood safety. Our surge and contain strategy, which has reduced the footprint of the demonstrators, continues.
Okay.
As we do police operations, our police operations are focused on enforcement in our downtown core. Yesterday, an important court order was issued in relation to the demonstration. The Ottawa Police Service is authorized to enforce compliance with the terms of a court order. The Ottawa Police Service continues to have authority under Section 127 of the Criminal Code to arrest and lay a charge for breaching a court order. Ottawa police officers will exercise their discretion in enforcing this order and any criminal investigation arising from an alleged breach of this order.
All right, so they're escalating.
We're working to ensure we're enforcing the order. Work is underway to fully brief all officers on the terms of the order and their role in enforcing it.
All right, and so remember
we
some of this.
To capture and document evidence.
We talked about a lot of this last time. Remember in the preceding city council meetings, Carol Ann Meehan, Diane Deans, many of these people were screaming about this. You've got all of these orders in place. You have all of these legal tools and justifications, but you're not getting nice enough. And what good is an order? What good is a declaration of emergency? What good are all these laws on the books if you're not actually out there doing anything about it? And so here he is sort of saying, okay, listen, we're briefing everybody. We're getting everybody up to speed. This is the update. We're just issuing these press releases like the one we just read through, and stuff is going to start happening is where he's going with this. Let's check back in.
We'll have an update on this later today. As more resources become available to us, we will use them specifically to focus on the unlawful demonstrators whom have chosen to remain in our city. To date, we've made 22 arrests, issued more than 1,300 tickets, and have 79 ongoing criminal investigations. We've seized fuel and...
All right, let's pause on that real quick. So I think he said 22 arrests, which is not much, but he did say something like 1,300 additional citations, right? So they're writing a lot of tickets is what it sounds like. That number has increased dramatically from previously when there was basically, I think, 7 arrests. And so 7 to 22 now, still, pretty inconsequential relative to the time here. And we've seen what some of these arrests look like. Did that 70-year-old man count as one of the arrests? I don't know.
Cut off material, financial, and logistical support to the occupation. I also want to be clear, we're not just dealing with demonstrators in Ottawa. Yesterday, working with Ohio police, we were able to trace, identify, and arrest an individual for calling in fake threats designed to deceive and distract our emergency resources.
Okay, so did you hear that? They're working with Ohio police. That's our police. What? All right. So it's an international, I think, a attempt to evade an insurrection happening, a global insurrection. And so he says that somebody was making phone calls and trying to distract them. I wonder who that was. I wonder if it was a trucker or just a crazy person who was making phone calls to the police. But he's going to use that as a victory. Ring, hey, we got a victory. We made an arrest in the United States because we're under international assault by the truckers.
Many of the remaining demonstrators are highly determined and volatile. They've begun filling gas canisters with water, distracting officers, or otherwise attempting to subvert our efforts.
What?
Yesterday, we had an attack on our hardworking officers. While attempting to seize fuel from demonstrators, multiple officers were swarmed by these same demonstrators. We've initiated a criminal investigation into this matter.
We played that yesterday.
We've towed some vehicles and continue to face resourcing and operational challenges in doing more. Many heavy vehicles in the downtown core have been immobilized. Recent aggressiveness towards our officers is unacceptable. We've identified our need for the 1,800 officers and civilian personnel that will bring a safe end to this occupation. We do not want anyone to be injured.
Then stop escalating.
We know that some demonstrators have indicated a desire to leave. In some cases, they're blocked in by other vehicles, and where possible, we're working to facilitate their departure. Through intelligence, we've also learned that almost 25% of the 418 trucks encamped in our city have children living in them.
All right, so we've got two things we got to pause on this before we let that go. Number one, remember he just said that they were swarmed by everybody? We played that video here on this show yesterday, and yeah, there were people who were very interested in what they were doing, stealing their cans, their gas canisters away, not real happy about that. And there was the one video where they were singing the Canadian national anthem as the masked law enforcement serving and protecting their fellow citizens as they were absconding with everybody's private property, their fuel when it's 20 below. They're heroes that night. Everybody was singing songs around them, but they are such little literal snowflakes that they are intimidated by this swarm that's taking everything over. That's number one. Number two, children. Did you hear what he said? 25% of these truckers have kids. And now we got to think about the kids. And now we have to step in using the strong arm of the federal government, maybe to exercise our lawful authority, not in the interest of quashing the protest, but because these insurrectionists, basically the Taliban is here and we know how they treat kids. And so listen to that. Here it is. We're going to break this down a little bit further because he gets a follow-up question about it.
Children who could be at risk during a police operation. We're working with the Children's Aid Society to ensure their welfare and safety. Finally, our message to demonstrators remains the same. Don't come. And if you do, there'll be consequences, including financial consequences for your illegal and unlawful behavior. Thank you.
All right, so that's his opening statement. You can see that's what they published. Now, we are going to go through because he took a lot of additional questions, and we want to break that down and tease everything out and see what is actually going on here. So remember, now, a lot of the media out there, CBC and many others, we have a clip from a woman who is very angry about what the media has done near the end of the show. But here, one of the first questions is to this is Deputy Stephen Bell. This is the police chief's second in command, number 2 in line. He goes out and executes on all the orders. And so they ask him specifically, you talked about this incident where your officers were kind of swarmed and they're under attack and like this is a violent trucking group of maniacs. Can you tell us, Mr. Deputy, what were the injuries to those officers? Like, are they going to survive? Here's what he says.
Désolé. Vas-y, Jadrino.
Avec le 147, je suis avec Bell Media. My question, Mr. Bell, you told us about an attack, and Mr. Slowly talked about injuries to some of your officers as well. Can you give us an idea of how many officers were injured and the kind of injuries that they suffered?
Any injuries?
Merci Jordan pour votre question. In terms of serious injuries to our officers, we're very fortunate to report that we haven't had any to this point.
Of course.
There has been, during altercations, some more minor injuries sustained by the officers, but nothing that has taken any of our members out of commission or not able to continue to provide policing services.
Okay, so everybody's fine.
Thank you.
There's been no injuries. Probably a couple slips and bruises or slips and falls maybe. It was, it is Canada. There's a lot of snow on the ground, and I would imagine it's pretty icy out there. So probably old Officer Lou kind of probably slipped on his big fat butt and kind of, got a bruise back there. And so, yeah, you tally that. Injury. Who caused it? The truckers did. Yeah, they caused that one. So, bumps and scrapes maybe because they were ripping people out of their cars, or maybe that 70-year-old man they arrested and threw to the ground yesterday. Maybe he hurt one of them. I don't know. It's hard to tell. But you also know from this deputy that they're really concerned about the children now because, everything's about the children. And if you can use any leverage to manipulate your enemy or to make them look bad, put them in a bad light, you'll do it. And of course, this government has done that from day one, saying that there was swastikas flying around, Confederate flags. These are racist people from the United States. And this is all a fringe group that has no connection at all to Canada. All of that, of course, has been nonsense. But they are doing whatever they can to malign the truckers and anybody who stands up for liberty and democracy anywhere. And so another one of these stories comes out from the CBC, says that large numbers of children among the protesters are hampering their response. And so I think what they're saying is that the truckers have now taken children as hostages, I think. And they're using them as hostage in their hostage negotiations. And so the police would go in there and clear them out, but they've got, look at these, just two young people there. You know, they just look like a couple of kids. And so the police can't go in there with their SWAT team and take out everybody because, well, there's kids there. It's like human shields. Deputy Chief Steve Bell says almost 1/4 of the trucks include children in there. Here, children stand in front of a truck on Parliament Hill protesting government restrictions, saying, if we keep spending like this, we will all be living in one of these cabins. So it's about spending policy also, which is a good thing to protest because kids are going to have a big fat bill to pay. Now, CBC also tells us a little bit more about this. And I wanted to dive into some of these numbers, right? As of noon on Tuesday, police say they've arrested 23 people, active 85 criminal investigations, more details on their enforcement, saying that they're going to increase penalties and blah, blah, blah. But Bell also turned his focus to the children of the protesters. Over the weekend, bouncy castles were set up near Parliament Hill, probably terrorist bouncy castles. They're probably orchestrating, you know, the next 1-6 in there, trying to seize Parliament Hill. Don't let the fun and laughter confuse you. They are terrorists. And they were near Parliament Hill to help entertain, or I would say train, the children. Bell said police are working in the Children's Aid Society of Ottawa regarding those children. So yet another government organization, the Children's Aid Society. Well, man, it would be really bad if those truckers, you know, were not working with the Children's Aid Society. You know, monsters over there. But 25% of the 418 trucks still have children in them. And so, of course, when you start talking about people's kids, you know, that kind of really escalates things. You got to be very careful about that. Okay, you can go and take their fuel away. You can go and say, we're going to take your cars away and your licenses away, but not we're going to march Child Protective Services into your camp and take your kids away. And so if you start hinting at that even a little bit, people are going to get a little bit squirrely. So one of the individuals from the media asks Mr. Bell about this in particular. They say, hey, you going after those kids or what?
Deputy Chief Bell, when you speak of, I guess it's something like 100 trucks that have children in them, and you're saying the CAS is involved, are you requiring that they somehow are able to remove the children from the trucks? I mean, what would be the next steps for police in terms of you know, moving on any of those trucks if you're concerned about kids?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question, Kate. So we identify that concern for us. It's something that has come to us early in the course of this occupation. We observed through members who are moving around within the crowds that they began to saw children, families that were actually had attended here to take part in the occupation. Okay. It's something that greatly concerns us. It's something that concerns us for the well-being of everyone within the area, from the risk of carbon monoxide and fumes, the noise levels that we know are experienced by the neighborhoods, the neighboring areas, as well as the people that are right in the occupation. We're concerned about cold. We're concerned about access to sanitation, the ability to shower. There's a multitude of concerns. That's why we're raising it and identifying it as something that is something we need to address. We need to have discussions with our partners in the Children's Aid Society about how we manage moving ahead. Yeah, we're not at the stage of looking to do any sort of enforcement activity around that. We'll rely on the Children's Aid Society to help provide and give us guidance around that. We just think it's an important fact.
Did you hear what he said there? We're not going to do any enforcement around any of that, but we're going to rely on the Children's Aid Society to tell us what needs to happen next. Okay, so what happens if the Children's Aid Society comes in and says, these truckers have their kids in squalid conditions and the federal government can raise them better? And so they say, well, if obviously the federal government can do everything, what should we do, Children's Aid Society? And they say, well, we have to go save those children. And they say, perfect. We'd love to go take their kids away from them. And like, he didn't say that wasn't, all right, so let's finish it before I start talking out of turn here.
That's in that complicates and makes this an even more challenging operation that's important that people are aware of.
All right, so we talked about children right now. You can see they're sort of using this as another leverage point. Well, we're concerned they're not getting showers, and they may be getting sick, and they may be getting COVID if something happens. And so now we don't want to go in there. We don't want to go in there and have to deal with all of this, but we're just doing it for the children. And truckers, you should be thinking about the children too. And so building a little bit of sympathy there, trying to use some other tools to see some movement here. We'll see if that works. Now, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Rance Derrick, I saw this on Twitter, says, whatever it takes, troll them into submission. Trudeau looks like the weakest leader in the world right now, which is absolutely true. It's a close tie between him and Joe Biden. I'm not sure, but it's close. Says, you need to be a part of this. Don't be the last one to figure it out. You'll miss history. Hi, Jim Watson, Ottawa. And remember yesterday, we were talking about the scene where the jerry cans were being seized, right? The gasoline was being hauled out from the truckers. And the very, innovative people decided to do a little bit of a workaround. And this is what it looked like. We talked about this yesterday. Everybody is walking with the jerry cans. Tons of fuel. And so as they bring it out, boom, they just bring it back in. And that is sort of the illegal thing to do, right? They're carrying flammable fluid around, allegedly. Now, yesterday on the show, we talked about the idea that some of these might be filled with water, or some of these might be filled with Kool-Aid, or maybe they're empty, or, who knows? Maybe they're filled with gasoline. It's hard to tell. And so the police now are going to have to stop and inspect every single one of those. And there's a lot of them, as you can see. And they're coming from all over the place. And all these terrorists with their gasoline cans, that are going to fuel their vehicles so they stay warm and survive. Well, that's going to cause a little bit of complexity for the government, for these law enforcement officials. And so once again, this is Stephen Bell, Deputy Police Chief. He's the second in line from Ottawa. And he's going to be asked about this in particular. Going to say, hey, Police Chief, you guys yesterday were doing this big victory lap, really proud of yourselves, kind of patting yourselves on the back that you were able to start seizing fuel and reclaiming territory in red zones and green zones. And we're in Fallujah all of a sudden. But it sounds like these truckers just picked up some new cans and they just sort of walked them on by you. What do you have to say about that, Chief? Are you guys kind of being made fools? Here's what he says.
Logistically, how much difficulty does the fact that people are bringing in water in these fuel tanks, how much difficulty does that put on the Ottawa Police Service in terms of enforcement?
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Alex. It's a good one. What I can tell you is it does provide a layer of logistical complexity to us. If the number of gas cans going in, it creates challenges for us to actually conduct searches, to stop and conduct searches, ultimately seize those gas cans and the fuel in them and potentially charge someone as a result of that. The other thing it does for us is identifies a level of sophistication and a level of ability of this group to try and subvert police efforts. That's concerning to us. We know we continue to have discussions with the demonstrators about the occupation. We are actively looking to find remedies and resolutions to end this. But we know that as they harden in their position and as they try and engage in activity that subvert our efforts, it's quite concerning to us.
It's very concerning indeed. Yeah, it is concerning because you guys are stumped as can be.
Thank you, Alex.
Oh, that was a nice way. Oh, that kept playing. That was a nice way of saying, yeah, it's a big problem for us. We don't really know what to do about it. There's too many of them. We can't stop every single one of them. They just keep hauling the fuel in. We just keep taking it out. They just keep bringing it back in. And so it does add a layer of logistical complexity. That means we don't know what to do about it, which is hilarious. But then he pivots. He says, that little jerry can maneuver They learned that from Al Qaeda. That's where they learned that. And so you can see the level of sophistication. They're probably embedded in the dark web. They're working with that guy from Ohio who made that phone call that time, and they are subverting our efforts. Yeah, really sophisticated, and it's very concerning to us. And so they're a little bit stressed out about it, I think, which is just, too bad. Isn't it just the worst? All right. And so he gets several questions about the fuel cans because it is a brilliant maneuver. And here's another one. Somebody says, all right, so listen, they're going to do this fuel thing again. What are you guys going to do about it? I mean, if they're just hauling them in there, like, are you going to stop everybody? Here's what Bell says.
What's your strategy? And I know you can't give us all the details, but what's the strategy for fuel right now? Are we going to stop everyone that we see with jerry cans, or do we want to do more organized, more bigger operations to try to get more logistical spaces where there's more fuel that is stored? Because we're seeing a lot of jerry cans walking around. So what can you tell us about that?
Yep, thank you for your question, Frederick. We don't have a strategy around that. We have multi-prongs to our enforcement strategy that we're employing.
Sure.
We put out a statement yesterday that indicated that if you carry a jerry can into the downtown core, into the footprint of the demonstration, you would be subject to being stopped, searched, and potentially charged in relation to aiding and abetting the demonstration moving ahead. While we were doing that and while we were engaged in those enforcement activities, we were also out at Coventry Road looking at how we could take off the larger stockpile of fuel that we knew existed. There is no single strategy to this. We will do everything in our power to disrupt and deter these people from remaining in our city so that the demonstrators pick up and leave. That includes multiple different prongs of enforcement that we are engaged in now and will increase over the days.
All right. So he says we have no strategy. We have multiple strategies, and none of them seem to be working. Now, the big one, of course, is sort of asking people to self-enforce, saying don't bring your jerry cans back down here with fuel. Otherwise, you might be subject to search and you might be charged with a crime. But if they search all of those and half of them are, gasoline and the other half are not, then they're going to sort of be wasting a lot of their time. And now you've got this cat and mouse game yet again. And many of the truckers have said, anecdotally, they don't really even care about those charges. And if it's just fines and things like that, they've got funding to help support them through that. So, okay, we'll see if that continues. Now you have people who have their trucks and their livelihood, maybe their kids in the car, 25% of the truckers do. And so are they just going to say, well, I guess we're just not going to bring fuel to our families? That's also ridiculous. And so you can kind of see they're kind of stuck again. Another question on the jerry cans, because the media is interested as I am. Here's what they asked.
In the city believe that the city, why the police are actually going to be able to enforce this when we have concrete examples of large amounts of fuel and jerry cans moving into the downtown core and the police standing by and doing nothing?
They're not doing anything.
Thank you for your question, Mackenzie. And it's a really good question. Yesterday, you saw us lay out the request for augmented resources to come into the city to help us manage the situation around the demonstration, around the occupation and the demonstrators that were in that area. One of the things we identified in early days is it was going to be really important for us to cut off the flow of fuel into that area. As you've just indicated through the pictures that you've taken, there are many different ways, different places that flow is coming in through.
Yeah,
we believe that the 1,800 officers and civilian members that we've requested will help us harden up the perimeter of that will lead us to be able to have better success in interdicting fuel as it enters into the demonstration area. We are doing interdiction. There is no doubt. There were several charges yesterday, several seizures yesterday of gasoline. We also have the example where one of our members was swarmed during one of those interdictions.
Again!
And ultimately, we had to bring a public order team in to help protect the member, effect the arrest, and take the subject and our members out of that area. It is important that we have the right number of officers, right number of members present to be able to safely effect those arrests and safely do those interdictions. That's why we've asked for the numbers of officers we had, to make sure that we can do the enforcement job that we know we need to do.
Yeah, so he talks about the 1,800 additional RCMP officers who are going to be coming because, well, put a pin in that, right? We're going to put a pin in that number because as we go through and check in with the city council is going to be essentially telling us how many officers it takes to move. I think it's the city council, maybe it's him. 1,800. We're going to just keep that in mind. We'll get back to that. Now, we are going to go to the streets here a little bit. We spent some time yesterday talking to ZOT, YouTube, and Ottawa and Viva Fry. We're all around on the ground, boots on the ground. And several people on Twitter mentioned this fella, and I spent some of the day watching him. His name is Ottawa Scotty. And he's over on YouTube. His channel looks just like this. You can see I subscribed over to him. I'd encourage you to do the same because he's got some very good reporting. Seems like a very nice guy. And he's doing some really good reporting from on the grounds. Now, we're talking about the gas can containers. And let's take a look at the scene from Scotty as he is walking around. Here is what it looks like. And remember to go sub over there.
Let's see if we can talk to the, here we go with the Jerry
gas
can.
Gas can.
Told me to still get my second dosage due to the Delta variants.
And you can see the jerry cans just lined up, man. They are everywhere.
And at Brampton, Ocean Hospital, and at Sunnybrook. Chest pains are all coming from anxiety attacks. And not at all related to my vaccine Pfizer.
All the jerry cans. Some of them have gloves.
She was sent home with me so bad. The only thing that helped
Voy a repartir bicicleta china. Esto fue en el año 86. Hicieron bicicleta china. A todos. ¿Por qué mejor andar en bicicleta más
Oh, jerry cans for days, baby.
I wish there was new that people can have one match. These vaccines have not been out long enough, but I believe there are far more risks.
Some good looking jerry cans. Look at those. Very beautiful. All right, and so you can see that is from Ottawa Scotty, and he was over there, boots on the ground all day today. And so we've got a couple more clips from him. But that was one of the questions that a lot of the people in the media had. What are you going to do about that? There's too many of them. And as we could see, there were quite a lot. Now, another big part of the government strategy, the police, they wanted to start moving vehicles. Now, I think from the city council's perspective, from law enforcement perspective, from maybe the upset citizens perspective, they want to see action, right? They want to see a physical truck move, because to them it's like this eyesore. It's like a symbol of oppressive tyranny in their city, and they want action, right? They want. We heard this during the Meehan meltdown. Ottawa city councilor literally begging the police, "Help us, save us." And she just couldn't fathom that they weren't just executing all the people who weren't following an order. She's like, well, you got to just put the foot down and start cracking some skulls. And so that's what they're talking about. And they get, this is the deputy police chief who gets asked about this, saying, look, can you actually move some of these cars out of here? Put them on a flatbed or something and get them out of here. And here's how he addresses that.
In terms of actually moving the vehicles that are blocking streets out of the downtown, what are your next steps, and when can we see more of that action taking place, given the situation?
Thanks for the question, Ted. Yeah, the immobilizing of the vehicles in the occupation area is extremely concerning to us. You're absolutely right. We've seen vehicles that have had their tires taken off. We've seen larger vehicles that we know have had their brakes bled to make them rendered immobile. We identified early on there's many layers of complexity to dismantling this occupation. One of them is the sheer size of it. It covers, as we know, many blocks within our city's downtown core. The other challenge is the size of the vehicles. When you add the complexity of active attempts to interfere with any of our ability to remove them, it just adds that extra layer of complexity. What I can tell you is it's something that we're absolutely considering. It's something we're planning around. And ultimately, at the end of this, when the occupation is over and people go home, We know that we're going to have to do some cleanup in that area, and we're making operational plans to actually achieve that.
Okay, so really a lot of additional complexities are being layered on here, man. You got layers of complexity with the jerry cans, layers of moving the vehicles now. Some of them have their tires off, some of their brakes are just welded shut, and so they're just not going anywhere. And so he's saying we're planning around, moving these things, but they've got kids in the car, and my goodness, and there's just a lot of them also. They're spread all over the place. But we're working really hard to solve it. But it's complex. And we're stuck, is essentially what he's saying. Let's go back over to UA Ottawa Scotty, because he takes us around now, and we can see some of the other things that are going to be making it difficult to move around the city. It's not just the truckers that are making it difficult
how
to
to
move.
support UA Ottawa Scotty YouTube channel, and that's probably the best way. Having a look at these police barricades, really heavy eye bolts here.
See these?
Heavy
the police
stuff
dropped
here.
these down.
It's interesting how these go together. Let's have a close look at these barricades here. This is, I'd say, quarter-inch steel plate. We've got a half-inch steel plate here, and then looks like we've got a 1-inch steel plate, really heavy steel. These heavy casters. All put together with these cotter pins.
Police barricades.
Kind of an interesting, hi guys, how are you? Hi. Kind of an interesting bit of kit here. Thank you so much, Victor. Really appreciate your support. We're just very interested in the.
Yeah, and so he has this other guy who comes up
Here,
and they sort of
trying to figure
explain
out
how this works.
How do you think this works?
Is that supposed to be a blockade?
I think, yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, I would assume so.
See, if you tried to drive over it, it'd just come up and plow underneath you.
Ah.
Hit it from that side, it's going to flip up in front of you.
Okay, that's how it works. Okay, so this gentleman here is okay, so it would, if you hit this way, that would come up and claw you from underneath and raise.
You'd slide right up here, and then this thing here come up underneath.
Okay, and that would bring your wheels up off the ground and.
Or down
Okay.
the bottom of your truck.
Okay.
Bust the fuel.
Are
Yeah,
you?
so that would obviously make it difficult to drive over that, because if you drive over it, it's going to tip it up, and it's sort of going to be like a rake and, lift your car up, and won't be good. So they're, also the police are sort of barricading the entire city themselves to stop them from moving around, essentially, sort of a quarantine and relocate strategy, but they're not doing too well with it. They keep losing ground. And so the media is now asking Mr. Bell, they say, hey, Mr. Bell, do you have all the powers you need? Like, is there anything else that we can give to you? Like, do you need to just eliminate our Constitution, our Bill of Rights? They call it the Charter of, I think, Freedom and Bill of Rights, something like that. Do you need to just get rid of any of that to solve this problem, sir? And here's how that goes.
Does the Ottawa Police Service currently have all the legal authority that you feel you need to end this protest, or are there additional powers or authorities you're going to be seeking to acquire before this can officially be routed and ended?
My apologies. Thank you for the question, Craig. As we indicated very early on in the early days of this, everything is on the table for us to consider in terms of options. You are absolutely right. There are several legal avenues that we need to explore and continue to explore. As part of our ask in resources to come and assist us, it is not only uniformed officers to be engaged in our frontline, front-facing activities. We have within there lawyers, legal competencies that we're seeking from various different agencies, including Transport Canada, the Ministry of Transportation Ontario, experts in insurance, experts in licensing and registration.
Going after everything.
These types of vehicles, these types of large trucks. So we do know there are several avenues for us to explore. We've brought together an investigative strategy that looks at all of those different avenues, and we will use everything within our means that currently exists and explore anything else that we need to have added to our toolbox to hold the people that are engaged in this accountable.
right? So they have been saying that for a long time. That was part 3 of Slaley's plan. Number 1 was the surge, which they're getting from the RCMP. Number 2 was the barricades. We just saw that from UA Scotty Walks. Number 3 is the intelligence. It's going around, getting everybody's names, identifying everybody, who owns the truck, who's the insurance provider, who are all these prospective protesters, terrorists, and what can we do about their licenses and their insurances, and where do they work, and what types of professional organizations are they a part of, and how can we bring the pressure of the federal and the Canadian government at every single level down to bear upon them. And they have done it, right? They've already been successful with this. They used it against GoFundMe, and GoFundMe decided to attempt to steal $9 million from the truckers, right? So they do buckle. These private companies, these private organizations, insurance providers, different states, they'll all buckle if they receive an order, a lawful order from a foreign country, right? So in the United States, we have what's called an interstate compact, where our states will communicate with each other. And so if you get a ticket in Arizona and you go over to California, and you got multiple DUIs in one state, you can't go over to another state. And so they're working right now, it sounds like, with their U.S. partners to disqualify people from coming across the border and to really sort of ratchet up all of the different legal tools they can in order to gain some leverage here. We'll see how that works. We have a couple more clips from this guy, I promise, and then we're going to move on to Jim Watson. Jim Watson is the mayor of Ottawa, but we've got a few more of him because there's a lot of good kind of intelligence that comes out of this. Here is where he's telling us specifically about what they're going to do with the new 1,800 officers that are coming from the RCMP. And we're also going to pay attention to sort of the context of an additional 1,800, because as we're going to hear from him, he's going to say 400 officers per day are needed really to secure an area. Let's listen.
Of this 1,800 officers that you're looking for, you mentioned earlier that you sort of need more officers in order to sort of harden that perimeter. So a lot of people are wondering why the city doesn't file sort of more injunctions to get the vehicles out of there. But if they did, would you actually be able to enforce that with the officers that you have at this point, or is it a resource issue?
Thanks for the question, Laura. So the 1,800 officers are for a multitude of different activities. You've heard us talking about hardening the area around the demonstration and around the occupation. It takes upwards of 400 plus officers a day to manage that footprint that we currently have and actively look to shrink that footprint.
All right. Did you hear that? Did you hear what he said? 400 officers per day to manage just that footprint. Now, I don't know exactly what footprint he's talking about. It might be the footprint right around, that sort of main hub right outside of Parliament Hill, but 400 officers per day just to kind of maintain it. And then, they're trying to shrink that footprint, essentially, kind of close it in. And so they're going to have 1,800 new agents that are going to be sort of assisting with that. But now put a pin in that, because there are additional protests that are popping up in different parts of the world. Really, there's another one over on the Windsor-Detroit border between the U.S. and Canada. And so, it's like, okay, you bring all these agents over here, but there's another one growing somewhere else. They're basically running themselves thin. Let's listen to how this continues.
Beyond that, we know that we need legal resources. We know we need investigative resources to look at the investigative strategy that we are looking to implement to create increased enforcement activities. We know that we need public order assets to be here to support us, as was evident yesterday as we began to do fuel interdiction as it went into the site of the occupation. It is going to take, and we've identified a number of resources to come in and support us to end this. We are absolutely committed to ending this, and that's why we've made the large ask we had, so that we can have the presence we need to successfully, expeditiously, and quickly end this occupation.
All right, so they're going to be waiting on those additional 1,800 to come, and we'll see sort of where they put them, right? Is it around the footprint? Are they going to try to, surround and squeeze type of a tactic? Don't know, but I think we've got final clip from this guy is an updated timeline. All right. And then we're going to go over to Jim Watson with the city council. Got several clips of him because he is very rude to the truckers, and we're going to have to talk about it. So here is the final one from Steve Bell, deputy police chief out of Ottawa, saying, hey, do you have a timeline on this? Like, is this going to be 2 days, 3 days, a week, 2 months? What do you think? Here is his answer.
Chief Bell, I was just wondering if you can give us any kind of updated timeline. Do you expect the protest to continue through this weekend? Do the police have any kind of new operating timeline, any expectation?
Thank you very much for the question, Matt. So from the beginning, we've never identified timelines for this. We want this occupation to end as soon as possible.
So
we
no
want
timeline,
these demonstrators to pick up, realize that their message has been heard, and go home to where they came from so that our citizens can have their city back. We feel we deserve this, and our citizens are very loud in calling for this to end. We continue to work every day to as expeditiously and safely end the occupation so the citizens of Ottawa can have their city back.
Yeah. Okay. So he's going to continue with that line, right? A lot of this, we're under assault, we're under attack, mirrors exactly what Jim Watson, the mayor of Ottawa, is saying. Here, City of Ottawa is holding another city council meeting where they're going to be asking and answering some questions of the media. And here is one of the first things that the city council has done. And so previously we talked about Deputy Police Chief Stephen Bell and some of the things that they have done to use law enforcement and their strong arm to go out there and enforce criminal laws. But they can only enforce the laws. They need the city council to pass them and increase the penalties. And they did. We talked a lot about this. Some penalties went up as much as 10 times. Some went up, I think, double, others 3 times. But several of them, like the ones that matter, honking and idling and some of the big ones, those increased pretty dramatically as a result of what the city council did. Here is what Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson has to say about the new increased fines. He's pretty excited about it.
So, Kim, do you want to just confirm what you just sent me with respect to the decision just a few moments ago about the fines?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I just received confirmation that the Regional Senior Justice of the Ontario Court of Justice has increased the following fines to their maximum of $1,000. That's the noise bylaw. It was $490. It is now $1,000. The idling bylaw, it was $100. It is now $1,000.
10x.
Use of care of roads bylaw from $350 to $1,000. And the open air fire bylaw from $100 to $1,000.
Another 10x. Fires, outside fires. And the idling, $1,000. So from 100 to 1,000. Now, some people have been asking a very obvious and reasonable question. Hey, Trudeau, Mayor Watson, Police Chief Slawley, you people, would you be willing to talk to these truckers? They seem to be pretty reasonable. They just want an end to the mandates. Many other countries and many other provinces and many other states around this world are all ending a lot of their mandates. Would you consider that? Would you sit down with these truckers and just have a conversation with them and talk to them about this? Here's what the mayor says.
And for the mayor, have you considered meeting with the protest organizers? I know that you floated the idea of a mediator, but have you thought about meeting them in your capacity as the mayor of Ottawa?
The short answer is when all of the vehicles are out of the downtown core, I'd be happy to meet with them. But I'm not going to reward bad behavior by giving them a meeting that they would use for political purposes. If there's nothing in it for the city or the citizens of this community that have suffered greatly as a result of their outrageous behavior. So move the vehicles and then you can come to City Hall. We'll have a meeting. I'm not sure what it would accomplish because, as you know, the mandates are governed by the provincial government and the federal government. But if they want to meet with the mayor, I'm happy to do so, but they've got to get rid of all of their rigs and clean up the mess that they've created in our city and give the city back to the residents of this beautiful capital. Thank you.
Oh, man. So he's a little bit cranky there. You can see he is not happy right now. He's so mad at them. I'm not going to reward their bad behavior. It's like, like a 12-year-old or something. And so, all right, that's... I guess that shows you how much they want to negotiate this thing away. Not at all. Not until they leave. Well, if they leave, then what do they have to negotiate with? Not too much, right? That's kind of the point of the protest. So, all right. So he's pretty hardened, not negotiating, not even considering it, basically saying, I don't talk to terrorists. And the Taliban truckers, of course, is his perspective on this whole thing. Ridiculous. Now, he is also very rude because this is something that he said about this negotiating process. The truckers, they've said, hey, we're willing to talk. We're willing to we want to resolve this thing peacefully and amicably, but we've been painted into a corner ourselves over here. And so how about we just have a conversation about this? And he says that they look like a bunch of jokers and they're embarrassing themselves. He says it comes out of Monty Python. It's very rude. Let's listen to this guy. This is the prime minister. No, this is the mayor of Ottawa, which is the head place where the country, it's the capital of the country. Let's listen to how he talks about his fellow citizens.
On one hand, we certainly see a sense of organization, but then on the other hand, there's a sense of disorganization. Some of the press conferences we've seen are out of a Monty Python sketch. I'll sit down with the Governor General, I'll sit down with the Bloc Québécois. They're living in a parallel universe that just does not make any sense, and they're embarrassing themselves. I think they should get on their way, go back to their homes, and give back our city to its people. Thank you.
He said the truckers are embarrassing themselves with their Monty Python press releases. What? Well, I guess they all don't, the truckers haven't assembled yet. I say give them 2 weeks and they'll probably build one of these things. But no, they don't happen to have a giant council table. All right. My gosh. These are guys who are like recording these videos from restaurants. We've played many of them here, and he's saying, well, look how amateurish this is. It's pathetic. They don't even have the CBC News there to take their statements. Peasants. He's calling them peasants is what he's saying. What a ridiculous. He's the leader, mayor. Now, he does give us an update. He says, I've been working on this. I've been up at night. I really can't sleep. I've had to take 2 Ambiens every night. And so now I am very concerned about what happens. And so I need help from the federal government. And somebody asks him, when are they going to come? Are they coming anytime soon? Here's his answer.
Question is for Mayor Watson. Obviously, you met with your federal counterparts yesterday. You're meeting again with your provincial ones today. I know you said they're putting together a timeline for when they might be able to get those resources you've asked for. Do you have a sense of how long it's going to take? Is it still in the 24 to 48 hour range?
Yeah, thank you, Laura. The meeting, which was held over Zoom, and the phone calls I've had with senior officials from the federal government was very encouraging and very positive. The Prime Minister committed that we will be getting more resources. Our staff now are working out the timing and the numbers, because obviously we're not going to have everyone that we've asked for arrive immediately, but it will be spread out over a number of days. So when we get that information, we'll be happy to pass it along. But the signal and the response we received from Minister Blair, Minister Mendicini, and the Prime Minister was all very supportive, because they understand that our resources are stretched to the limit and we need that extra help. And that will be the message I'll be giving to the Solicitor General of Ontario when I speak with her later today.
Yeah, but they asked for all of this help a long time ago, and it's still sort of slow rolling out into these cities. We've been talking about these 1,800 RCMP agents for like 3 or 4 days now, and there are new organized protests bubbling up in other parts of the country. So if Canada now says we're going to send our 1,800 RCMP to Ottawa, all right, clear that out, truckers. All right, they just reconvene. They go, all right, we're going to go right over there to Ambassador Bridge. Are they going to take another 2 weeks to move their 1,800 RCMP agents over there? It's this cat and mouse game. And he's got no clear timeline, because they don't have a timeline. They are running out of police. They're running out of law enforcement. There's not enough of them. And so here is another clip where somebody asks him about a mechanism for filing an injunction. And we talked a lot about this, right? A couple days ago, we'll revisit this briefly, but a couple different legal theories here, right? One is that the city goes and files an injunction. The problem with that strategy is if the city loses that injunction and the protesters win, well, then now there's precedent. What happens if a judge, although I think it's probably unlikely, again, I'm not licensed in Canada, but if there was a judge up there that said, no, I mean, it's protest. We've got precedent here. Back in 1867, the so-and-so clan came out here and they stood in the streets for a long time, and we let that stand. And so we have to, hold true to precedent and let this one stand. And now the city government comes out and says, oh, shoot, they've got a court order. They can stay here as long as they want. And so when you start to engage in that type of litigation, you might expose your underbelly to a large degree. And so the government is hesitant to do that, even though these non-lawyers and city councilors and people who are hysterical, melting down Meehan, they're all complaining about this. Do something! But they don't want to talk. Of course, they don't want to negotiate. They'd rather just round everybody up and put them in camps. Here is the clip asking about the injunction.
Should be happening in public. What is the mechanism for the city filing an injunction? is this something that would happen sort of behind closed doors before it's filed? And is there a reticence on the part of legal services to move ahead without sort of the indication from police that that's something that they want?
We have David White, our city solicitor.
All right, this is the attorney, and he's...
Yes, in terms of the process, it's kind of well laid out. An injunction is kind of part and parcel of a broader, there has to be an underlying action, and so it would be commenced by an action, and then the injunction would be brought immediately as part of it. As to whether it would be brought against a particular individual or identified individual or what's known as ex parte, where essentially without notice, that's something that is always part of what the approach and the strategy needs to be. And so that depends on the nature of the injunction. Is there any reticence?
Yes.
I wouldn't suggest that there's any reticence, but I think there's an appreciation.
Yeah, there's reticence.
An injunction, certainly one brought by the city, is something that should be complementary and in support of the overall police response to the protest. So that's why there's been, again, coordination between my office and the police in that regard.
Yeah, because the city council thinks that they can just show up with an injunction. They'll just say, oh, a court issued an injunction against you. Look. And they're going to go, oh my gosh, who signed it? A judge? I better get up. Honey, pack everything up, get the 2 kids, and let's get out of here, right? That's not how that works, but they think it is, and it's obviously not. And so they're screaming about this injunction, but the attorney, who's basically the only reasonable person that I've heard from on this council, other than Bev Johnson, is somebody who is basically saying, no, it's not, no. Like, we can't do that, right? Because the law says you can't do that, even though, I mean, this poor guy, he's like been trying to parry all of these requests. No, we have a constitution and there's some liberties still that are protected here. All right. And so we have another question that goes to the mayor asking about 72 hours. There was a deadline that came out from Police Chief Slolly. Slolly said, 72 hours, we're going to start to see some activity and some movement. Obviously, that's not happening now. It's Wednesday, it's hump day, and we don't even see an end of this thing in sight. We've got Thursday and Friday, and then it's the weekend again, and we all knows what happens during the weekends. All these truckers, they come back over here and infest our city. And so I feel like we're losing the work week, says this person in the media. And then the mayor says, well, listen, I've communicated the sense of urgency to Justin Trudeau and others. We listened to Justin Trudeau yesterday. He had his big mask on and he looked a little bit stressed under there. It's kind of like sweating a little bit under there, saying, I know everybody's frustrated, but just do what I say and things will get better. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So here is the question about the 72 hours and total ineffective governance being asked of the mayor.
Chief Slowly had said 72 hours. He'd hoped to see officers. That would be up, I guess, tomorrow, right? And we're losing the work week, I almost want to say. Are you worried that we're not going to actually see officers on the ground helping make a difference during the weekdays? Or perhaps you understand that some officers have indeed shown up that we don't know of?
Sorry, Laura, or Kate, could you just repeat the last portion? It got cut off.
Yeah, mostly about worried they won't come in time for the weekend, but possibly you could confirm if any have indeed shown up, since we last heard from the police.
Excuse me. Yeah, the police would have to answer that. I don't believe so, because we just had the meeting yesterday to go through some of the logistics, but I have every confidence that we'll see additional officers here for the weekends, which tend to be the more challenging times
for the weekends
with respect to behavior down in the red zone. And then the following week start to see numbers ramp up considerably. So as you know, many of the officers will have to come in from different parts of the country, not just the province. And there are some logistic challenges, but I made it very clear that there is a sense of urgency, that we need these officers sooner than later. And that message was received and acknowledged by the officials that I spoke with.
Yeah, it does not sound good to me. I mean, it sounds like to me, like they're getting just strung along. It's like, is my delivery supposed to be here? And you contact them and they're like, no, it's on its way. And you're like, okay, it's supposed to be here on Thursday. It's Thursday. It's not here. No, it's on its way. And you just check again. The tracking number says it's delayed, but they promise it's coming. Like, it feels like that. Even the media is noticing this. They say, the 72-hour thing that Slolly said about 48 hours ago. That expires tomorrow. Are you going to get anybody here tomorrow? Because we're losing the work week. And he doesn't say yes. He says, well, we're probably going to be here by the weekend, maybe, because that's when things really get bad. And he says that even then it's going to be a problem because we've got officers who are coming from all over the province, all over the rest of the country in order to show up. They are strung thin as can be. And so if they do, let's say, rally all those officers up, they come, they start arresting people for $1,000 tickets for idling or honking or whatever, right? And then the truckers, that they clear that out. Well, or let's say, I highly doubt that happens, but let's say they were able to make a dent in it or something with all of this national force bearing down upon Ottawa. Okay, they're over at Ambassador Bridge, they're over in Coots, they're over in other parts of the city, in the country. And so, well done, I guess. The other alternative would be to talk to them and negotiate with them and actually have a reasonable resolution that seems like it might be in alignment with what many other civilized nations are doing throughout the world. That's just me. So we have Mayor Watson now. We've got a couple other clips asking him, do you think that this is just going to keep on going and going and going? Because you and your government have been largely ineffective, and you're also not even good leaders. You're not even willing to talk to them at all. Here is what Mayor Watson says.
I think that without that, this is just going to keep going.
Well, Ted, it's a very good question. And unfortunately, I don't have a good answer because I can't predict the future. I wish I could. I wish this whole nightmare had ended 2 weeks ago.
Poor Jim.
Come in, have your protest, and leave. You've left your message behind, and then go to your provincial governments, as you pointed out, and deal with them on their mandates, because most of the mandates come from the provincial government, not the...
You get 1 day of protest, according to Jim. One. Come in, 1 day, and then leave your message and get out of my city.
Federal government. So at the end of the day, I can't predict when this is going to be over, but one of the ways it's going to be over is a greater police presence to control things like gasoline still getting into the red zone, the outrageous behavior of those involved with the convoy in different residential neighborhoods. I just got word, I'll ask Kim Ayat to talk about the request that we put in to increase fines. That's just been approved.
So we got that. Now,
like
you could hear
idling.
him say, this is a nightmare, worst day of my life, worst week ever, and I'm having a really difficult time with this. And so now I want to play, this is our last clip of this city council meeting, I believe, but this is where it's going over to the city manager, okay? And remember, we've got, this is like a whole of government response. They feel like they're in World War III there. And he is saying now that they're really having a difficult time. I think he says the word sort of hopscotching around. The media asks him, why are the truckers allowed to sort of just be here and then be over here and then hopscotch all over the place, bounce around from location to location? And so this goes back over to the city manager, who says, look, we set up these blockades. They just go around them. And so he says, and listen to this, he says, they are not leaving, right? The city manager is kind of acknowledging they're not leaving. They are here. And so what we need to do is manage the situation, stop focusing on getting them gone, but how to mitigate it, right? And so he kind of is, I think, somebody who is a little bit closer to reality. He says, they're not leaving. They're staying. And we got to deal with that. Here's the city manager.
Wondering why it seems that as soon as the protesters seem to be hopscotching around the city and setting up camps at different parking lots, why are they being allowed to do this, and why isn't the city taking more steps to keep them from setting up what seem to be supply depots and parking lots around the city?
Hi, Stephen. Steve Kanlakis here, city manager. Well, that's a question really that should be directed to police, and they're not on this call. I think that the challenge has been that the people that have been operating those vehicles, if they're not managed in terms of trying to put them in a place where we can manage the situation, they're going to park them wherever they want. And that's happened in some cases, as you see downtown. I don't know if you're in Ottawa or where you're from, but at Rideau and Sussex, for instance, we have a blockade of one of the major intersections of the city heading into downtown. And the trucks basically just parked there despite the police trying to direct them away. So the wins that the police try to get is that they try to put them in a place where it's manageable, versus them parking them all over the different types of streets downtowns and in residential neighborhoods, causing further disruption. Because the trucks are here, they're not leaving, and they're choosing to stay.
Yep.
And if they're going to stay, we're trying to mitigate as much as possible the disruption that they can cause by basically parking and leaving their trucks wherever they want.
So at least he's like got a grasp on reality. Like they're not leaving, they're staying, so we better deal with it. The other people are like, can we start shooting people already? Carol Ann Meehan is like, arm me up. How many can I take out? Because she's a psycho person. All right. And so there has been a lot of response to this. Of course, things continue to heat up in Ottawa, but there are some breaks taking place within the Liberal Party, Trudeau's party in Canada. The Hill Times is reporting that a Quebec Liberal MP, somebody named Robillard or something like that, also breaks ranks. Also meaning that somebody else did. We're going to learn about that person as well. Questions Trudeau's government's handling of the pandemic and sides with somebody named Lightbound, who we're going to learn about in the next slide. This guy's a 3-term Quebecer. He wants Chief Government Whip Stephen McCann to apologize to him to dropping to him from something. And he says here that Lightbound is another Liberal MP who yesterday said that Trudeau had created coercive methods. He broke ranks with the Liberal Party. And there's a full transcript of this. I didn't clip any of it, but certainly, right, you can see sort of two liberals, right? This would be like, I think for us Americans, it'd be like a liberal, a Democrat saying, you know what, the Republicans are kind of right about this. Joe Biden is actually ineffective. And that might cause some eyebrows to go, what? Wow, that's interesting. You're switching sides? Maybe people will listen. Now, there was something interesting that happened on the show yesterday. We were talking about some of, I think it was Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe had ended a lot of the mandates that were taking place in Saskatchewan. We also heard at the close of the show yesterday, same thing was happening in Alberta, but now apparently it's kind of like a little bit more of a balancing act, because Michael Singer posted on Twitter, says that within an hour of announcing the quote end to Alberta's vaccine pass, Premier Kenney adds a quote state of emergency will continue. Businesses may also continue with QR codes. Vax passes will return if more shots are needed, and predicts annual COVID shots for the rest of our lives. What? Let's listen to this guy.
I think it's quite likely that for the rest of our lives, we're probably going to need to take an annual COVID shot, much like the annual flu shot. Every year, as you know, there's a slightly modified flu vaccine that is made available, and that is quite possible for COVID. Are we then going to attach this? Is this going to become a permanent feature of our lives?
Maybe for you there, buddy boy, but I don't know about the rest of us. And so here is what... that raises some eyebrows, obviously. Does he have Pfizer stock, or what's the deal with that? I mean, every stinking year, like the flu shot? All right. So, of course, check with the CDC and your local health authorities for official guidance on that. But that guy is pretty excited, I think, about jumping into a bathtub full of syringes from time to time. I don't know. But here's the point, folks. These protests and convoys are spreading around like wildfire, and they are becoming very impossible to stop. Election Wizard, a great follow on Twitter. Please be sure if you're on Twitter, you're following Election Wizard. Great follow. Says, watch, truckers block the Ambassador Bridge connecting Canada, Windsor, and the United States, Detroit. And you can see here, this looks like it's probably a pretty important bridge. And it also looks like there is nothing going across it. You can see this is a helicopter photo. The bridge is just absolutely packed with trucks. And so the truckers are focused on these areas where there's these really, really important ports of entry, major trading ports where the Canadian businesses are interfacing with United States businesses, and it is just at a standstill. My goodness. Nothing coming, nothing going. Maybe you can squeeze a bike through there. I don't know. But this is a big, big problem economically, right? So they don't even need to take over a whole city or a downtown Parliament area. Just park some trucks on a bridge. And that's about all she wrote. So you can see that this is going to cause a lot of serious concerns for the people in power. Now, the question to them, are they going to sort of, talk to the people, or are they going to continue to play the Justin Trudeau, James Watson playbook that isn't working? Here is Drew Dilkens. He's the Windsor mayor, and he's going to be detailing some of his concerns about this.
Afternoon, everyone. As you are aware, over the past 48 hours, the Ambassador Bridge has been impacted by protesters in a manner very similar to what has transpired on Parliament Hill. The difference here, however, is the significant impact on the busiest international border crossing in North America, and of course, locally on our own economy in Windsor, Essex. Now, I want to spend a moment talking about what's at stake here before I turn things over to the Windsor Police to provide a tactical update. The local transportation and warehousing sector is made up of 2,600 businesses employing over 10,000 people in Windsor, Essex. Those are 10,000 members of our own community. It is also an enabling sector that helps to move goods, people, and services. The Windsor-Detroit Trade Corridor is one of the busiest commercial border crossings in the world.
In the
world. It is estimated that more than $450 million in goods crosses the Windsor-Detroit border each and every day.
$450 million crosses that bridge each and every day, folks.
Representing 1/3 of all surface trade between Canada and the United States.
A third of all trade.
More than 6,500 people residing in the Windsor-Essex area work outside of Canada, nearly all of whom commute across the Windsor-Detroit border. This includes healthcare workers that have spent the past 2 years saving lives on the front lines of this pandemic on both sides of the Detroit River. Windsor-Essex boasts an industry profile of more than 1,000 manufacturers, $4.5 billion in manufactured goods produced in annual GDP. That's 30% of the region's total GDP production.
Now, listen to this guy versus some of the other guys, right? So we heard from Watson. This guy's talking about some interesting figures and numbers. Billions of dollars here, number of businesses, right? Some really consequential injuries and some economic hardship that are going to be placed upon the city. Watson was talking about psychological warfare because of the horns, right? And so we're talking about, I think, two different calibers of analysis here. And we've got some more clips from him. And he's sort of, I think he's recognizing here really how precarious this is, right? This is sort of a higher level situation. And he's, I think, trying to be a little bit more diplomatic about what he says the truckers are doing. Let's listen. He says they're mostly peaceful.
Of this protest have been by and large peaceful and without incident. And I want to commend the men and women of the Windsor Police Service for all that they have done to de-escalate where required and to maintain security on site. In the past 24 hours, we have spoken with officials at both the provincial and federal governments. And here, we are formally requesting additional resources.
All right. Did you hear that? He spoke with the feds. They're also requesting additional resources. They need them over there at Ambassador Bridge. Well, they're all going to Ottawa. And if they don't go to Ottawa, well, then maybe they're going over to Coots. And so they are running out. Let's go back.
While we are hopeful the situation can be resolved in the near term, we need to plan for a protracted protest and have requested additional personnel to be deployed to Windsor to support our hardworking members of the police service. We are striving to resolve this issue safely and peacefully. My office has already received numerous complaints and calls from local residents.
A lot of complaints, and then we've got one more clip from him, and then we're going to get into the questions.
The social harm that these protests are having here in Windsor, in Ottawa, and across Canada is quite significant. The resolution to this will require a whole-of-government approach, with leadership required from Ottawa and Queen's Park to bring down the temperature and resolve these protests peacefully.
All right, so they need the whole government to come out and act. Otherwise, they are going to be in trouble. But as we have seen, a lot of this is already being gobbled up by the protests in Ottawa. And so let's take a look at what you have to say about this over from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And then we're going to also check in with our friends, of course, on YouTube and some of those very nice super chats that came in. I am pulling all this up here. Grouchy old cat lady on Local says Rhode Island has lifted all vax passports and mask mandates as of Friday, except for schools. The beginning of the ball is rolling, and that's from Grouchy old cat lady. Former LEO says hopefully the victims are receiving receipts for the illegally confiscated fuel jugs. The end result should be a class action claim to recover their property and complaints through internal affairs with video supplied. It was policy that all officers had to be identifiable by either a display name tag, star badge number. They should demand supervisors at the scene of those mass confiscations. And so it's a good question there from former LEO. And, you know, this is in Canada, remember. So I'm not sure what their policies and what some of their rules are. On YouTube, we're welcoming Miranda Raw News as a member. Berry Cream, yes, please, says, would like to mention a video. Freedom Convoy, we're not afraid of being unlawfully arrested. We're not afraid of being unlawfully arrested. Let's see if I can pull this one up. Here's one from YouTube.
Ken,
great. And yep, this looks nice and YouTube safe. So let's listen into this one.
Sass asked him what was up. Yeah, people are on edge because they talk to the internet. And the internet talks about how the police are playing a big build-up. And yes, Thomas Quigley speaking for the truckers last night at a press conference that you can check in with Laura Lynn to see that from last night, was not inspiring confidence at all. He looked like a defeated man who had, was surprised that police might crack down. They have had a war room in place of ways to sabotage this movement from the beginning. The false flags, the false Nazi flags, and false Confederate flags that are of their own making is all they're running on as a pretext. And the fact that they've hystericalized the Ottawa populace by saying it's an insurrection, they're harassing people. No one's harassing anyone except mass people that have been whipped up into a frenzy by watching too much news. So, we're all here, we're all peaceful. No one here is scared. I've never found a trucker yet that's like, oh my God, they threatened to arrest us unlawfully, I better go home. Everyone is here to do what must be done and stay here peacefully. What the police do is up to them. What's up, brother? And we feel no pressure by them to be, oh, we're going to leave. Oh, I was going to save my country, but then I heard that the police might unlawfully arrest people on no reason whatsoever.
Right on,
no one
man.
here is scared of that, guys. The police, it's up to them in their own conscience. We've done what we can to build goodwill with them, and now it's in their court. If there's RCMP all suited up and we've got their riot shields, we're going to tell them our name, and then we're going to say we'd like to speak with counsel before we talk to you any further. Everyone here knows the deal. No one here is scared. I said on day one, this is a no fear campaign. All this bad stuff, doom and gloom that I thought could happen has not happened. They have a couple of flags of their own making to generate a demonization of this movement, and that's it. People are abandoning them. Right now, the Liberals are running away from Trudeau. Right now, you've had Aaron switched out with Pierre for whatever cosmetic purpose that serves. It's just a different puppet that doesn't speak as stupid as Aaron did, but that's neither here nor there, guys. We'll talk about the political aspect after we win the mandates war. But we're all here and we're not worried. You're worried because you feel helpless because you're not here. Why don't you fix that? If you lose contact with us and cell phone service goes down, everyone come here, or elect one person of your family that can be loaded up with supplies, water, canned goods to come down as a representative. Make sure you pick someone who's not easily agitated and can stay Jedi-like calm in the face of tyranny that's going to be hoisted upon us. We're all here for the long haul. We're all here for freedom. We're not scared of being unlawfully arrested. Stop shitting your pants out there, guys. I get it. It's a psyop of misproportion, but you can live through this.
Love it. Love it. All right. And so, right, there you go. Right. And that's kind of, I think, where
those watching,
there's a giant disconnect between the truckers and the police. They think that if they get served with an injunction, they're all going to grab their boots and go home. Obviously, that's not the case. There's a lot more fortification going on there than I think they even have any ability to fathom. John Arnott became a member. Welcome, John. Grimm's Bar says, wouldn't Canada working with Ohio State Police be a violation of the Logan Act? I don't know anything about that. The Logan Act, I think, that's the Foreign Interference Act, right? The Logan Act, I'm not sure how that would interface. That's the Canadians coming into the United States. I think the Logan Act, right, doesn't that apply to diplomats or to Americans working with foreign governments? Oh, I see. So maybe you'd go after the Ohio police for working with the Canadians. I'm not sure how that works. I'm sure they've sorted through that, but it's a good question, Grimsbar. Not Applicable says, stop having kids so that we can brutalize you. Yeah, I think that's where they were going with this. They want to just, or they want to just sort of gobble up your kids and raise them for you. Robert Somerville with the nice donation. Tammy Lamaster says, I look forward to this show every evening. Thank you. And that was a very nice, generous one, Tammy. Thank you for that. I'll tell you this. I look forward to doing the show, to spending time with you every day. We talked about this on Locals earlier this morning. It's just, I'm very passionate about these issues. Sort of, built a law firm sort of around the concept of freedom and accountability and transparency and justice, and the fact that we get to have conversations about these major bubbles of freedom and liberty throughout the world. It's a really humbling and amazing experience. I'm grateful to spend time with you. So thank you for that. Tammy Lemasters, really do appreciate it. Another one from Robert Somerville says, it's even more sinister than that. The Ottawa government bought up hotel rooms across the city to deny access to showers and warm beds, hoping to create evidence for the latter seizure of kids, maybe. Either way, ACAB is what Robert Somerville says. Yeah, and so saying that maybe they're trying to create an environment whereby the truckers, can't provide certain resources, and then say, oh, look, they can't provide resources, and that justifies whatever they want to do, right? It's pretextual to give them a basis for going in and seizing kids, fuel, vehicles, who knows? Jeff Pearson says, cops has no clue how air brakes work. Escalate and provoke is all they're doing, all betas. Yeah, so that's a good point, Jeff Pearson's, right? It's not like regular brakes. These are air brakes in most of these vehicles. I don't know much about the brakes either, though, so to be fair. Jill Coate with a nice donation. Thank you, Jill. Dr. EMB's in the house, and Dr. EMB, you're on our brand new supporter spotlight slide. I'm going to explain that in a minute. David Lammers with another one says, to my understanding, these trucks don't take gasoline. It's diesel. So why all the talk about gasoline? It's a good question. I think you're obviously right about that, but I think I just use it interchangeably. It's gas. But you go to the gas station to put gas in the car, whether it's 87, 89, or whatever, diesel, it's all kind of gas as far as I can tell. Not applicable says, these are psychos. These are the psychos, want to make you take meds. Yeah, that's from Not Applicable. I think they probably should be on meds. Wolfgang Deo says, you're also on the spotlight slide, Wolfgang, says, why in the hell do we need to deal with the common cold more than we did for a millennia? These Canuck government people just need to be quiet and go away. From Wolfgang Deo, Mario Gretzky says, Ottawa local here, strong convoy supporters. FYI, Meehan was a longtime local CTV MSM reporter, infamous for hating neighbors. Honk, honk. That's amazing. Carol Ann Meehan is a very, very troubled woman as far as I can tell, in my opinion, of course. Wolfgang Deo says, and what about the truckers that helped keep the economy going for 3 years so those medical people can get their wares and eat and enjoy Netflix? And nobody cares about the truckers, right? I say this all the time. The truckers get picked on all over the place by police, by law enforcement. Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, we've got all sorts of state statutes in Arizona that make it class 1 misdemeanors, the same as a DUI for like not wearing a seatbelt or for touching a cell phone. It's ridiculous. And so the truckers, right, nobody appreciates them. But all those N95 masks that lunatics were triple masking themselves with, who delivered those to your local Whole Foods? The doctors did. I'm sorry, the truckers did, not the doctors. Wolfgang Deo says, Dr. EMB says, subvert police effort equals, oh my God, we are worried. You people have a brain. That's right. It's exactly right, Dr. EMB. They're getting a little panicky because somebody called them out on that. It sounds like they sort of got one over on you with those jerry cans. Is that true? He's like, well, sort of, yeah. But the bigger problem is it shows that they're subverting the police. What he's saying, as Dr. EMB points out, they're very smart. We can't figure out what to do about it. Dang it. It's like when you're playing a video game with your younger brother and he keeps winning because in Mortal Kombat, all he does is back, back, B, back, back, B, back, back, B all day. And every time you get that, whatever that is, you just get taken out again. It's very frustrating. Well, that same type of frustration seems to be affecting the Ottawa City Council. We've got some other YouTubes before we wrap up and go over to locals. We've got Not Applicable says, prefer this to a civil war. Really hope it works out. I agree with you on that one, Not Applicable. Things could, of course, be fiery, but mostly peaceful like they were in the United States. Wolfgang Deo says, why should we give 2 weapons about the residents? They've been ignoring what is going on at the core of the country, so they can do nothing. Jack A's. Just Cause says, did you see Biden is giving out crack pipes? Yeah, I think that was part of the new Hunter Biden initiative, wasn't it? Crack pipes on every corner. Like Michelle Obama was like, let's move and let's get exercise. That's like Hunter's thing. Let's smoke. Crack. It's kind of like the opposite of dare. Eric McLennan says, People who love themselves will stand up for others. People who don't are susceptible to being bullied and eventually into being bullied into bullying others. Empowering humans is the only way to freedom on planet Earth. I love that, Eric. That's beautiful. And I agree with that. I think that, you know, a big part of what I want to deliver in my life and in my practice in my law firm is helping people get more freedom and more autonomy and be comfortable in that, right? Where they're not, you know, engaging in criminality or spiraling out of control, because we've all been there. And we've all got, you know, lessons that we can share with other people that I think will give them some of that empowerment. But what we see from the other side of the government is not that, right? It's disempowering. It's you are weak. You are afraid. You are going to be injured. You need our help. We're going to take control over all this for you. Just give me your liberties. Give me more of that power. It's disempowering. It's taking optionality and choice away from people. And it's anti-freedom. And they are doing it every day, hand over fist. It's disgusting. Durago Sullivan says Logan Act was the lame pretext for getting General Flynn. Goose, gander. Yeah, I remember that. Flying all over the place. Not Applicable says, this guy is awesome. What a hero. I think that was on the last guy who was speaking out about bringing your family over to support him. Mike D says, imagine a V so safe, you have to be threatened to take it. For a disease so deadly, you got to be tested to know if you have it. Very interesting. Reframe on that, Mike D. It is a good question. And a lot of people just, I think, don't understand that complexity there. Veteran Support says, I know how I feel. Thanks for showing me how I feel. Right. Freedom. That is from Veteran Support. Thank you, Veteran. Chris D says, so they are basically implementing stop and frisk, right? So my understanding is that they can actually do that already. Friend of mine sent me a text message last night and said in Canada, it sounds like they can just kind of pull you over for whatever reason. Like you don't actually even need reasonable suspicion to conduct a traffic stop in Canada, which is wild to me. I didn't know that. Let's go to locals. Angie is here, says, hey, Rob, good to see you. Been watching your streams on playback, but missed a show here and there. The question, though, is what's the deal with the name change? What happened? Well, I switched to my mom's name. My mom's name is Govea, and I have a very close relationship with my mother, and I felt like it was the right thing to do. It was the right it's the right name for me. I've been thinking about it for a long time, and we have a very sort of a deep connection. She's an amazing woman, and I feel like that's the appropriate name that I want to live under. And so I just swore allegiance to House Govea. That's all. Not even complicated, but thanks for asking. And I'm glad that you're back here, Angie. We have another one from Renee. Says, I'm interested in learning more about the evolution of the legal entity that's organizing the protests. So I'm not sure that there really is one. You know, it's sort of organic. Like, I don't think they have, you know, Freedom Truckers LLC that is incorporated and taxed as an S Corp with the IRS. Like, I don't think that's happening, but I think there's a number of different organic groups that are all fundraising and sort of working with one another. Former LEO says, it appears that some of the actions of the politicians is to escalate. Maybe it's time for protesters to do their own press release, and they've done many of those. They want conflict. I think the protesters should return the favor. I don't think that is the case. I don't think that the protesters want conflict, and I wouldn't encourage that, of course. Miss Lucky says, Sergeant Bob, Ottawa City Council members, might just be as useful as the city of Portland, where real mayhem prevailed. That was from Sergeant Bob. Hyper Patriot says, what would be interesting is having a split screen with the false statements by police, city council members, Trudeau, with the actual events they are lying about. Compare and contrast that visually, while they lie about what is happening. That's sort of what I've been trying to do. It's like play their clip, play some reality from somebody who's boots on the ground. Everybody can compare and contrast, and you can be the judge. Do you see Nazi flags all over the place? Do you see Confederate flags all over the place? Even the honking has stopped, honestly, right? Former LEO says, I think they should be concerned about children freezing to death because of the fuel that is being illegally confiscated. DG McBride says, would be great to have the behavior panel review the cops' video for signs of deception and honesty, right? He was kind of squirrely in his chair a little bit. I noticed that too. C Rose says, hey, Rob, under Canadian criminal code, the police interpret the word interferes to charge people with mischief as a result of what they perceive to be as improper behavior in public or in private places. This can range from taking photos of people without their consent, sometimes leading to voyeurism charges, to running onto the field at a baseball game. All of these people get charged with mischief-related offenses. I haven't been able to deep dive about whether the police are permitted to seize property in the course of enforcement, but it seems to me these statutes are extremely broad. Thoughts? Also says, Rob, here is the statute I think the police and Diane Deans are enforcing for reference. It's mischief under section 431. Everyone commits mischief who willfully obstructs, interrupts, or interferes with the lawful use or enjoyment of property. Yeah, that's the one, right, that they cited. And, you know, to me, yes, it sounds extremely broad. Now, from C-Rose, right, we talked yesterday, and you told me a little bit more about this, that they sort of don't really need reasonable suspicion to conduct a traffic stop, that there is a basis for pretextual stops, I guess, under Canadian law. And so these gigantic, broad statutes don't surprise me. We actually have a lot of those in the United States, too. Our disorderly conduct charges are as broad as can be. And our, let's say, reckless driving charges or, you know, careless driving. Many states have these statutes where they have these very, very broad charges. Like, what is reckless driving? In Arizona, if you look it up, the statute, what does it say? Something like operating a motor vehicle in a manner that would constitute a reckless disregard for the safety or well-being of other persons or property. And you go, what? What does a reckless disregard of safety of other persons or property mean? What does that even mean? Ultra broad. Disorderly conduct, right? Conduct that is disturbing the peace and quiet of another individual. That can mean anything. And so the police know that, and they write people citations for whatever they want on those bases. They write statutes so broad that they can literally drive a truck through it. See what I did there? Kenny 1B says, do you remember all those Occupy Wall Street insurrections 5 years ago? Yeah, I do. Remember that? Yeah. They weren't calling those insurrections or bringing in a national organization to stop it. Three Girlies is here, says, oh my goodness, the jackboot a-hole is trying to set up a reasoning to take the kids through the children's services. Yeah, I caught that too. Says, this is infuriating. They don't have an issue with it any other time. Carbon monoxide poisoning, cold weather, showering facilities happens 24/7 for these kids. Why are they so concerned now? Because they want their way like petulant children. That's from Three Girlies. Former LEO says, are they trying to escalate this into a bloodbath by trying to remove the kids? Hopefully everyone who is harassed will take action about that. We'll see if they do. Not so sure about it. Let's see what else we've got over here. Doing a quick refresh on this. Miss Lucky is here, says, Sergeant Bob, you know, brilliant as it is about the fuel cans, a sharp grade school student could come up with the idea. Pretty weak case to arrest someone with a fuel can. But as you know, arrests are often made with no concern about, quote, winning a case. Old police strategy. By the way, trucks need diesel fuel, not gasoline. You can't just ignite diesel like gasoline. Thus, safety, not a real issue. I would bet a lot of the Ottawa police are not enthused about enforcement. Still, like the old guy being arrested, there remain officers who are heavy-handed with little justification. That's from Sergeant Bob, who's former police officer and from Portland. Former sergeant out of Portland, sharing some perspective on that. Thank you, Sergeant Bob. Three Girlies says, none of what these truckers are doing are technically illegal. At one point, will heads roll, politically speaking? I would think Canadians will start to wake up and realize just how bad all of their politicians are. I don't know, man. You know, Three Girlies, I think that I've seen, you know, conflicting public opinion polls that a lot of Canadians are sort of grossed out by what's happening with the truckers. I've seen that. But I've also seen the CBC saying things like, well, that's because there's Nazis and racists there. And so that's obviously not true. So how can those public opinion polls be reflective of reality if they're not based on reality? Kincaid says, good evening, Rob. I like to analyze things to their essence, not to be reductive, but rather to find the kingpin of the problem. If one observes the last few years, much of what some have claimed is coming to pass. A decision of emotion and reasoning has created a rift between the actual and the fabricated. Other than individuals like yourself outside of the machine, who do you think is genuinely rising against neo-tyrants? Oh, the other day I asked if you got your Sony yet. Did you use a lens adapter or just invest in a new mount? Thank you for all your efforts. That's from Kincaid. So Kincaid, I actually got a new Sony, yep, and I don't have it set up yet. I am going to be moving and sort of building a second studio. And so I'm saving it for that. And at that moment, I will give you an update on it. But that's going to be happening probably sometime in March. And so you'll start to see a little bit of a change in background when I do the show from another location in the future. Ed J says, Rob, I honestly believe that if they attempt to take one child for a trucker, they will look back at what's going on now as the good old days. They will have massive protests, the width, length, and breadth of both Canada and US. It would be a huge mistake, in my opinion, for those who want the protests to end. Wisest thing, join the world and end the mandates. But the government's decision makers have demonstrated they lack wisdom of any kind. Everyone, get a copy of Robert's book. It is Beginning to Winning, How to Fight Your Case and Succeed in the Criminal Law, Legal System. You know, actually, that's a good idea. Maybe I should make this PDF available for everybody. Beginning to Winning, How to Fight Your Case and Succeed in the Criminal Justice System. Now, it's not really for insurrections, but it might be useful because there's some good framework on how to present a legal case. I'll publish that. I'll make that publicly available if anybody needs that. Kincaid says, Canada's strife is a beta test for what is to come for us. China will be proud they raised us well. It looks very authoritarian to me. Miss Lucky says, an alternative strategy, ensure a traffic lane is open for average people to move, bring in porta potties, police patrols to make sure everyone is safe, then let Trudeau figure out how to resolve it. Oh, I forgot, he's missing. Look at your milk carton. Sorry for all the comments, I just cannot stop. That's from Sergeant Bob. Well, we're glad you're here, Sergeant Bob, and I think I understand what you're saying, right? It's police in Ottawa would just reorient and they would say, we're going to now focus on maintenance. We're going to hold the status quo. We're going to make the city as functional as humanly possible because we can't remove them. So we're just going to let it ride. And as the city manager was noting, right, the truckers are staying. They're not going anywhere. We've heard from several other people. Viva talked to two of them last week. And Viva was saying, those truckers were saying, we've got supplies out the wazoo. We're not going anywhere. So then you would just engage the status quo and you would say, Trudeau, it's your problem, right? If you want to make a policy change to end these mandates, they'll all go home, but we've done our part. Now it's up to you. I like that from Sergeant Bob. Vienticus says, well, with these barricades, I think it's time for more trucks to join the convoy. And not just any truck, monster trucks. Rah! Yeah, and so that would be pretty sweet. Is there, look, a monster truck convoy? Like, I'm down for that, whatever that is. I don't have a monster truck, but I might have to find out how to get one. It's probably expensive. I can't afford it. Former LEO says, they want to restrict the fuel to the protesters, so what would happen if the fuel tanker trucks, propane trucks, and gasoline trucks all stop delivering to Ottawa? Please also don't forget about the undercover officers and contract radicals that they use to escalate these situations. Kenny1B says, when the trucks come to DC to do this in a few weeks, it's going to get real. And if that actually matriculates, I think it absolutely will be. We've got a few others here. Robute says, LOL, the police want the protesters to leave, but they're blockading them so they can't leave. Talk about stupid. We have Robute says, Justin Trudeau is such a coward that there's this video about him. Oh, let's play this one. I don't know if we played this one on the show yesterday, but let's listen to this one. I don't think we got this one.
All those trucks and all that honking made me go pee-pee in my panties. I am scared of those people. I just don't want them to know it. Did you see they had bounce houses and line dancing in the streets? That is terrorist level activity. Seriously. That is why I pretended to have COVID and ran away when they all arrived in Ottawa.
Yeah.
All those trucks and all that.
Yeah, that's the official transcript. Yeah, that's the official transcript. Yeah, that's what he said. He was speaking in French, and so that's the translation officially. He went pee-pee in his panties. So it doesn't surprise me at all. Thank you for that official transcript there from Robute. Another one from Three Girlies says, this guy is sickening with his authoritarian machinations. He seems like he's truly delighted in the power he's been given. He is worse than the boss. He doesn't need to be anywhere near protests. He would be the one that would lose control and hit people. By the way, advertising the amount of officers they need daily, etc., only gives the truckers the information to wait them out. If they want the, quote, occupation to end, they could try listening to the protesters. I noticed that, right? That's why I sort of put a lot of a focus on that today. There's a lot of talk from the government officials. Man, we are strained to the max. We are like running out of resources, and they, well, are they coming at least? Maybe not. Not real sure about that. Hopefully by this weekend, says Watson. So, and there's a lot more stories about stuff, where they are actually, there's murmurings, there's rumors that the line on the government side is just not holding. All right, we've got another one here. Several others. Robute says, people should continue to troll the Ottawa Gestapo. Continue to make it difficult, right? So people can make their own opinions on all that. Kenny 1B says, a working class rebellion is happening simultaneously with a war in Europe. It's going to be a rough start for the incompetent Biden administration. Leafy Bug is here. Says, in Australia, the news media is absolutely crickets about the Canadian trucker protest. I had to laugh when the state-owned Australian Broadcasting Company published a, quote, fact check of the convoy, stating it's not really a big deal as some unreliable people are claiming it is. Just a few trucks, which could have confused the typical low-information leftist voter who would have thought, what is the convoy? But the ABC had completely ignored the story. I don't know what things are like in other countries, but in Australia, the only people who know what's going on in Canada are those that go to non-mainstream media sources to find out what's really happening. And I think that's largely the case here. I mean, if you're not actually following this convoy, right, there's not a ton of news about it on a lot of the places that I check regularly. Rio Butte with another one says, the council members are authoritarian. They should be trolled, as we do. We do a lot of that here. Bittersweet says, this has Pelosi and her doom squad written all over it. Hand of Nod is here, says there are two ways for the Canadian government to move forward: negotiations or violence. The proliferation of cameras and personal broadcasting are probably crucial for the demonstration to continue. When the enforcement arm starts jamming wireless communication, it's going to be go time. I suggest you reach out to Viva regarding the 2010 G20 summit. One of the trucker delegates referenced that incident. The aftermath of that may still overshadow Canadian leadership. Do you see any parallels to the Chicago 7? Maintain vigilance. Hand of Nod. The Chicago 7, so you got to refresh my memory on that. Let's look this up, see if it rings a bell. Chicago 7, is this with... all right, let's take a quick peek at this. 1968 Democratic National Convention, mistrial, conspiracy, crossing state lines with intents to incite a riot. I'll have to read more about that. That was from Hand of Nod. Very good comment. Kincaid says, so unreal. Listen to how calm and natural they are, and how they appear to be when they're dismantling the freedoms and the government and self-agency. Remove the smoke and mirrors. What's the result? I cannot think of any human design system that urges expansion or demands complete utilization. From Kincaid. Captain Jim says, hey, Rob, thanks for your coverage and breakdown. The truckers' biggest problem is that they actually have quite a bit to lose from all of this. Professional licenses, they must have a cost, time and money. Government can squeeze them and ruin their livelihood. Now, compare that to Chop and Chaz in Portland. Protesters, etc. Heck, not to speak ill of the dead, but what exactly did Rosenbaum and Huber do when not protesting? Frustrating. On another note, do any Canadian conservatives embrace this protest, or is it too hot for them? I see quite a few mandates got reduced and dropped, but are they doing it hush-hush? So I'm not sure, right? I haven't seen anybody come out from the Canadian government like officially endorse any of this stuff, but there are people who were saying, well, maybe we should talk to them and like listen to them. And so I think that there are, happenings in that way. It's Jake from Oxford. He's back. Says, Rob, the mayor of Ottawa must have gone to Oxford as well. His speech was amazing. Says, quote, I will talk to you truckers when you leave. Wow. Jake says, this is the same kind of talk Binger did with the don't talk while I'm talking, and then he never stops speaking line. He says, this is leadership at its finest. They learned about this at Oxford. Says he makes a strong statement in a 5,000 square foot room all alone from a monitor. Bravo to that man. He's so brave standing up to the truckers. Also, look at them with their sign language, man, and subtitles. They are so with the times. Maybe they could hire a person to also write word for word on the giant whiteboard behind the mayor. Probably my only improvement advice. That's Jake Sullivan. He went to Oxford. Very smart man. And he's got some governance advice for these less sophisticated city governors. Miss Lucky says, Sergeant Bob, I'm agreeing 100% with the defense attorney. Am I against police action? Am I supporting protesters? Sergeant Bob says, I must be in a Dilbert cartoon. It's like bizarro world. I know. Grouchy old cat lady says, the U.S. could help by dropping the mandates for truckers crossing into the U.S. Along the Mexican border, we allow unvaccinated truckers to cross over 25 miles without being vaccinated. That's per Truck Waves from Grouchy Old Cat Lady. We had a couple come in over on YouTube. Make sure I don't want to miss any of these. Hell Pike says, trucker here, thanks for the great coverage. Only in America can a show like this exist. Keep fighting the good fight, truckers. Thanks for being here, Hell Pike. That's an awesome comment. And I'm appreciative of the fact that you're here and that you enjoy it. Chris D says they're basically implementing stop and frisk, right? I think that's what they're doing. Not applicable says cover DOD leaks to Senator Johnson. Catastrophic data. Yeah, I've been so focused on the convoy that I've been sort of only getting the headlines on a lot of this other stuff. But I know Senator Johnson, I know there was this major sort of scandal where the Capitol Hill police were going into a congressperson's office and taking pictures of stuff dressed as construction workers. We're going to get to all that, no doubt about it. But there's just not enough time in the day, unfortunately. KZ Gypsy Muse says, did you address fact police returned jerry cans contaminated with 50% water to ruin truck fuels line? Oh, the police returned them with, so the police are now jeopardizing the fuel. Oh, so they're going to try to ruin the truck so they can't move? Is that their new strategy? That's good. So the trucks will just be parked there indefinitely. The police want to ruin the trucks? Brilliant. Sounds about right. Lava Java Lava says Trudeau should reach out to Russia to help quell the insurrection. Maybe that might work. Good to see you, Lava. David Lines became a member. Love that. Shout out. New gifts, and maybe we're going to get some more gifts if we get enough members. Wolfgang Deo says, I got Branca's book, already have Rob's. William McConnell says, anybody that receives a $1,000 fine for supporting freedom should get somebody to mint that ticket into a crypto NFT. The world will bid a fortune for it to support the cause of freedom. Oh, that is such a good idea. What if all the truckers who got a citation, they minted those as NFTs and everybody got to own a piece of the protests? I'd buy one. I would. I'd say, I wonder who that is. Who got that citation? I'd love to buy that from you and be part of Freedom Convoy history. It's a great idea, William McConnell. Now, I'm not capable of assembling anything like that, but that's brilliant. Wolfgang Deo says they might discontinue live stream of the city. Yeah, so the other thing I've heard is that they want to stop the actual internet, right? Shut off the internet so that people can't live stream and communicate, which would be also very interesting. Now, I wonder if people have Starlink or if that works up there, if they have alternative sources. But I'm sure look, man, where there's a will, there's a way. Kincaid also says, how come no one seems to be focusing on GoFundMe, regardless of how the money handled? Still a problem. Well, they are still looking into it. I heard that the Attorney General from Texas is actually bringing something forward against them. PWS MKAZ says, can't find the original source, but there are claims that a judge ordered the seized fuel to be returned. Not covered by the mainstream media. I've not seen that, PWS MK, but that is an interesting one. Kenny 1B says, imagine what happens if the truckers block bridges between Northern Virginia and DC, and they block the Washington Beltway. Yes, right? Why they're all freaked out about it. Vienticus says, I guess if I were Chinese, I would say jiao, which literally means add oil, but is a colloquialism that means good luck. Well, thank you for that, Vienticus. Oh, we have another one from Renee. This is Trudeau and Candace from today. Let's watch this. Candace is just outstanding.
Even countries with lower vaccination rates than Canada. Provinces are beginning to lift restrictions and getting life back to normal. Why? Because they're following the science. Canadians are ready to get their life back. But it seems like the Prime Minister wants to live in a permanent pandemic.
Yeah.
Dr. Ham, Dr. Tam, Dr. Henry, Dr. Moore, Dr. Hinshaw, Dr. Shahab all agree it's time to shift out of the restrictions and back to normal life.
Yeah.
So why is the Prime Minister so offside, not only with the science, but it would seem like with a growing number of his own MPs?
We talked about that. 2 of them. Bye.
On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, we intend to follow the science and are working closely with Dr. Tam and other public health officials to ensure that we get through this pandemic as best we possibly can. And that has been through vaccinations. The fact that 9 out of 10 Canadians have gotten vaccinated is one of the reasons why we're able to get through this, is why we've been able to prevent our health systems from being completely overrun. Vaccinations are the thing through this. That's why we're continuing to encourage Canadians to get vaccinated. Why, unfortunately, the Conservatives are against vaccination is, quite frankly, belong me.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, the science and the evidence is just simply not on the Prime Minister's side.
That's right.
Many of the reasons previously used to keep Canadians under restrictions are vanishing before our eyes. Other countries are opening up. Provinces are opening up. As he just said, 90% of Canadians have the vaccine.
So lift it.
The Prime Minister needs to put his ego aside. He needs to do what's right for the country. He needs to end the mandates. He needs to end the restrictions. He needs to listen to his own caucus. Will he do that?
Yeah! Right on, right on, right on. Get it. All right, so love it. So that is Candice Bergen. Outstanding. Love that. Thank you for that. That came across from Renee Ion Energy. PWS MKAZ says, it's easier to fool people than it is to convince them that they have been fooled. That's from PWS MKAZ. Another one. Wherever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to reform or pause and reflect. Tremendous says, I've been loving your coverage of the trucker convoy. I watch Viva for the boots on the ground and you for what the politicians and the police are saying. I love that you always encourage us to check out the channels of the people that you get your clips from. Keep up the great work. Well, listen, Tremendous. I mean, look, they are doing the real hard work out there. They're out there in 20 below. Did you see Viva's nose? Did you see Ottawa's? They're freezing out there. And so we wouldn't be able to talk about any of this stuff if it were not for them. And so I am eternally grateful for their willingness to go out there and, you know, put themselves in that position to sort of go out there and spend their full days providing transparency. Because if we couldn't see what was happening behind the scenes, literally, we'd be listening to what the CBC told us, we'd be listening to what Justin Trudeau was saying, and we would all be diluted and totally disconnected from reality. And because of Viva and Ottawax, and because of you, Ottawax, Ottawa Scotty, and ZOT YouTube, and many others, all right? I'm missing many of them. But it's the social media, that it's the transparency, it's the ability to actually see and judge for ourselves that matters. And so those people, man, it's like, thank you. Thank you for doing the work. I want to support you here the best that we can. 503 Unlimited says, all this stuff with Canada and the USA bugs me. The last 2 years has made me dislike police more than ever. If they want to be treated like mindless, quote, just doing my job robots, then go ahead and disband them. They are no longer fit to be officers. That's from 503 Unlimited. Ask Why is here, says, this is history in the making. With a capital H, right? This is history in the making. I think you're right about that. Monster One says, Rob, I accidentally posted some comments on yesterday's thread. Can you read them or repost them? You got to repost them. I can't navigate multiple things. You know, Monster One. You know, like I'm borderline incompetent with all this tech. Tremendous says, I've been wondering what happened to the second studio you used for about 5 minutes. Glad to hear you'll be creating another one. Hope the move goes well. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to help me get a lot more camera time in, and I've got some pretty good ideas for, I think, of you know, how we can do a little bit more here. And so I'm really excited about it. Been a long time coming. This one came over from Three Girlies. It says, a legal group representing the truckers tells police the protest is protected by the charter. Ooh, let's take a look at this one. This one is premium over from the Epoch Times. Good news, folks. You're talking to a premium member here. We have here, it says the protest is protected by the charter. Legal group supports the truckers. Tell the police. Okay, police step up efforts in recent days. We have a statement here from the Justice Center. We've talked about these guys. The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms posts this. They say, it is winter in Canada. Protesting is freezing. Section 2C of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is like their constitution, it says it protects the rights of all Canadians to gather together. Ottawa Police Chief stated publicly the truckers have been peaceful and not caused harms. Therefore, they're protected, right? Big long article here. A lot of details. And so thank you for the tag on that. That's from Three Girlies that, you know, they've got, we mentioned this a couple days ago, that they have this big organization, right? And there are many of these organizations, like we have the, in the United States, the NACDL, National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Okay, right. Big national organization. I think that's what this is. And so it's a lot of sort of attorneys and powerhouses that want to come in and pick up these causes. And that's always good news if they're on your side, of course. And let's see what else we've got from locals. We have a couple more here. Kenny 1B says, rumor on TikTok is that cellular service in Ottawa is being limited as well, right? They can throttle it. They can allow only a certain number of people to connect, you know, turn the bandwidth down so everybody gets like 10 kilobytes per second, you know, so you get emails, but you can't live stream, right? That might be one thing that happens. We have a fellow officer, a fellow lawyer is testing the waters on disturbing the police, even had the stones to show up in court in the only to get the charges dropped. That's from PWS MKAZ. Let me take a look at this one real quickly. Okay, a lawyer arrested as Michael Myers. Lawyer dressed as Michael Myers arrested after roaming the Texas beach as a prank. Okay, I'll read that one later. That was from PWS. Sasha Sisha says, hey Rob, not related to the topic, but what camera do you use for your videos? I'm scoping cameras. Also, Candace Bergen for Prime Minister. I think Candace Bergen for President of the United States. Can we have her? Can you send her down here? I like what I heard from her. We have, so Sasha, this camera that I'm using is a Sony A6400. It's an older model. It works fine. I have a Sigma lens. I forget what the specifics are on that, but I'm upgrading now for my other studio to a Sony A7 IV. And I haven't decided on the lens yet, but somebody here on this show sent me a memo. They said, Rob, you need to get a different lens because your nose looks like you got hit in the head with a shovel. It's like flat. It's really wide. Like you got a wide nose. And they said, if you get a different lens, it's not going to look like that. And I said, I don't know if you're right about that because I've seen myself almost every day for most of my life. And I think that's just how it is. But I am looking at lenses. It's a good question. I think that you can never sort of finish that process. You're always kind of experimenting with your gear. Sergeant Bob says, someone tell little Justin, encourage and mandate are not the same thing. That's from Miss Lucky. Monster One says, the Windsor mayor said federal government's plural. He was talking about getting the American feds involved. That's from Monster One, which doesn't surprise me a bit. I did not catch that. But it also doesn't surprise me. Another couple came in from Monster One that he posted on the other chat. Dang it. Radice says, here, more camera time. Are you trying to keep up with Ricada or do you just want to take your shirts home from the office? From Radice. I'm trying to level things up. I'm not quite sure what it looks like yet. We'll figure that out together, I think. Monster One says, sounds like they're having a pandemic of the ungasinated jerry cans. Monster One also says, Rob, you remember Waco? The excuse they used for that botched raid was the children. That's right, they did that. Remember that? They did that. That's a great point, Monster One. I forgot about that. But that's exactly right. It was the kids. They had to go in there and kill the kids in order to save the kids. Got it. Monster One also says, you remember that old guy? He was so dangerous, he probably counted for at least 20 arrests. Yeah, that's true. He was very violent. So maybe that counts as multiple arrests. 503 Unlimited says, I'm interested in learning about the law. What books would you recommend? Oh my gosh, that's a spicy question. I mean, it depends on really what you want. I mean, if you if you want to go deep on constitutional law, there's a good book that is not. There's a good book by Erwin Chemerinsky. It's actually it's a companion book to his constitutional law book. All right, Erwin Chemerinsky is probably the best or one of the most well-renowned constitutional lawyers that exists. He actually wrote a book that I have somewhere around the office. It's about this thick. It's on the Constitution, and it's really a big compendium of case law. He also wrote a companion book. This is what we studied in law school. A companion book that is actually an interesting read, right? The case book, the compendium, a big red book from Chemerinsky. Not that interesting to read unless you want to actually read the cases. His companion book is quite good though. So but that's like heavy lifting, you know, I mean, that's like really going into like thick law stuff. But if you're interested in the Constitution, It's interesting. Kenny 1B says, Justin must have small hands. Probably true. Kincaid says, if you use a lens that compresses, it will technically be more flattering. So people are agreeing. They say, Rob, you got a giant nostril up there, and I'm tired of looking at it. And so let's see what else is over on YouTube before we wrap it up for the day. Wolfgang Deo says, yep, they might discontinue the live stream of the city. Carlene, also with a super chat donation. Wolfgang Deo says, Nick is shorter than attorney Tom, 4'9". I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything. I neither endorse or deny or confirm any of that. Wolfgang Deo says, a flat nose is better than the nose of Nick. Oh, poor Nick. Don't tell him about these super chats, Wolfgang. He'll come over here and watch this, and he might be mad at me, and so we're kind of supposed to be friends. I think I like Nick. I don't want him to be mad at me. A good Constitution book is the 5,000 Year Leap. I haven't checked that one out either. I haven't heard of that one, but I will take a look at that. And I think that, my friends, is it for us for the day. William McConnell said, we got the NFT comment. Great comment. Let me do a quick check on the super chats. I think we got all of those up to speed. Did a refresh on locals. I think we're caught up there. And so that, my friends, is it for the day. And my goodness, I want to thank you for being a part of the show. That last one came in from Lenko. And before we get out of here, I want to welcome some new people to our community. And I want to tell you about our supporter spotlight slide. I'm experimenting with this thing a little bit. We've got some new members, though. Big welcomes to MJ Canine. Welcome. We've got Jelly of the Month who signed up. Jeff Rook is in the house. Ed Johnson, Airman Today, signed up, along with Kay Talking. C. Reed's in the house. Dante Picante, True Blue Trucker. It's All Alley, Short Time Here. Richards The Real, Lovely Gemini, Wonder Girl 30, C. Jones 007, at John. I see here One Tough Chick, Frank MC. We got Ion Energy, Wild Child, Alaskan for Trump, AZ Grayman, and Mr. Shields. And I want to welcome some two people to the supporter spotlight. Now, if you're on YouTube and you click the join button, you'll notice that there's a really high tier. It's the highest tier member that you can have. And I just put it on there just to see if anybody would even look at it. 2 people signed up for it, Dr. EMB and Wolfgang Deo. And the reason why I created this slide is because I wanted to sort of play around with this idea. I get a lot of emails, people want to sponsor the show. They say, hey, I'm a VPN company, or I'm a gaming company, or I want you to sell this, that, or the other, right? And a lot of them are great companies and great ideas, but I sort of don't have the bandwidth or really the interest in sort of overly making the show a big ad, right? Selling VPNs or any of that stuff. And so what my thought was, for those of you who do support the show regularly, like Dr. EMB, Wolfgang Deo, many others, I wanted to see, I'm going to experiment with this and see what you thought, was somebody else dropped another super chat? Am I missing something? Somebody's shouting at me. Wait, you have a super chat you missed. What did I miss? I have a big one that I missed. Somebody's chat is screaming at me, so I want to make sure I don't miss this. Robert Somerville. Eric. Okay, I missed an Eric super chat. Let's see what this one is. Eric McLennan. Oh, gosh, there it is. I'm sorry about that, Eric. I almost missed this one. People who love themselves will stand up for others. People who don't are susceptible to being bullied and eventually into being bullied, into bullying others. Empowering humans is the way to freedom on planet Earth. Yeah, that's a big one, man. Thank you for that, Eric. And I appreciate you for that. Thank you, chat, for smacking me in the head. I need that. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. And so thank you very much for that, Eric. Another one came in from Wolfgang. And so Playing Hooky saying, Rob, are you going to be just one big commercial soon? It's a good question. And the answer is no. I don't want to intend to be a giant commercial, but I do want to. I want to experiment with this a little bit, because here's sort of what I was thinking, right? If you do tier up on that high level supporter member support, I want to create a supporter spotlight slide for a logo, or for a link to a business, or a link to a personal profile. I want to support something that you want supported, right? So here, for example, right, just by way of example, I've got the R&R Law Group. I've got Eric's House, a nonprofit that I'm a big part of, right? Dr. EMB, right? If you had something you might want on there, Wolfgang Deo, if you had something you might want on there, right? Maybe we can, if you're that level supporter, then I can just kind of, flash those slides, show your logo for whatever it is you're doing, drive a little bit of traffic, and see if it's a mutual benefit. And so that's what that is. And so Dr. EMB Wolfgang Deo, if you've got something that you want me to throw on there, please send me an email or hit me up on Telegram. And this is available for everybody. If it sounds interesting and you want to experiment with that, let me know. Very easy to do it. You just join at that higher tier. Send me an email. I have total discretion to not accept it, of course, if it's like a link over to your, OnlyFans page. Not going to do that, but it's something to play around with and maybe have some fun with, because I know a lot of people do contribute a lot to the show, and I'm trying to think about ways where I can sort of, give you a little bit of additional value, in other words. So if that sounds interesting to anybody, please let me know. Other than that, I want to thank you for being a part of the program. We are going to be here same time, same place to do it all again tomorrow, and I hope you join us there. So if you're already not subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button before you get out of here. Certainly, I'd love a like before you split, because I look forward to seeing you here on the next one. It's at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. on the East Coast, and for that one Florida man, everybody else have a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.